Well, greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 193 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. Hey, I'm Rick Verbonis, and I'm your host, and I've got a co-host, best one out there. His name is Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray, South Pacific, Walter Winchell, Joe DiMaggio, Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, Studebaker, Television, North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe, Rosenberg's H-Bomb, Sugar Ray, Panmunjom, Brian Doe, The King and I, and The Catcher in the Rye, Eisenhower, Vaccine, England's Got a New Queen, Marciano Liberace, Satayana, Goodbye.
Wow. All right. I love that song, Rick.
Do you?
Billy Joel.
Yeah, what's the name of the
Right?
song?
Oh, I can't remember the name of the song, though.
It's the very next line.
Who started the fire?
We didn't start the fire.
Yeah.
It was always burning since the world's been turning.
Two
We
things.
didn't start the fire.
I think
No,
of
we
Ryan.
didn't light it, but we tried to fight it.
I think
What?
of Ryan from The Office.
Okay.
Right? Do you remember that episode where Ryan accidentally started the fire like in a trash can?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Dwight kept singing Ryan started the fire to the tune. And the other is I always thought that song would be a terrific basis for an undergraduate history class.
Oh, I'm sure some student did it.
You know?
I'm sure some student like wrote a report on it.
I'm sure they did, but I mean like a whole semester covering every personality or event mentioned in that song.
That would be great. I would love to learn more about Liberace.
Yeah, who wouldn't, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish my brother George was here. Wasn't that Liberace?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a little Paul Lynn in that as well. I don't know.
I used to be able to, that was one of the, Paul Lynn was one of the first actors that I could do an impersonation of when I was like, I don't know, like 8, 9 years old. I would be like, this is Paul Lynn, and I haven't done it in like decades. So I wasn't ready for that, but
for being rusty, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I would have known who you meant.
Yeah. Anyway.
But like most kids today, and there's a sequel to that song, right? I think
not by Billy Joel.
Not by Billy Joel. There is another artist who came out with a sequel to that song.
Well, there's been parodies too.
Not a parody. Not a parody. An actual sequel that covers
something that picked up from 1989 on.
And picked it up from 1989 on. So see if I can locate that. But it was pretty good too. So
why did I do that song, Bob? Why did I greet you with We Didn't Start the Fire?
Well, I think it might have something to do with tonight's issue, which is What If number 44, which I think came out around 1981-ish? 1984.
Yeah.
1981, I think.
Yeah, 1981. Yeah.
1981.
No, it was 1984.
Was it? Was it April 1984?
Yeah, it was 84.
All right. And so the title is What If Captain America Were Revived Today, which of course would have been 1984. So instead of waking from the ice in the 1960s, he would have slept through those decades. And what better way to tell him what happened than have him listen to the Billy Joel song?
Yep, that would be a good answer as well. Not where I was going, but I like it. I like it.
Okay. All right.
I was going with the fact that the song started in 1949 /1950 and went to 1980s. And the Captain America, the one I'm talking about. I don't want to give anything away in the story.
All right.
But there's a certain Captain America that was from the 1950s. And this was all his time period, right?
Yeah.
So like this song spans that Captain America.
That sounds as good a reason as any right there. So
yeah.
Would have been awesome if there was one from like 1929 to 1949 done by Al Jolson. But alas, opportunity lost. So
I'm mammy.
Exactly.
So yeah, anyway, doing that. there was something else. Oh, the other thing too about that song. Did you ever watch the Goldbergs?
Oh, of course. I love the
I
Goldbergs.
watched,
Yeah.
I don't know, like the first 5 or 6 seasons.
Uh-huh.
Love that show. Love that show. Fun cast. Um, there was an episode where the the older brother, Barry,
Barry. Yeah.
um, he was doing a talent show and he was going to go up and do that song. But the problem was he could never get the lyrics right. And he would just start making stuff up,
Yeah.
you know? And everyone's like, that's not the song. He's like, yeah, it is. Shut up. And he, and because he's got those guys with him doing the band, right?
Yeah.
And, and so he's doing this, and then everybody's kind of making fun of him. And then eventually at the end, I think his brother says to him, Adams is like, he's like, why don't you, because he likes to do raps, why
Hmm.
don't you turn it into a song about what you know
Yeah.
instead? So he ended up doing the song about the teachers and the school and the cafeteria and stuff like that, and
Uh-huh.
making it rhyme to that thing, and it was a huge hit,
Yeah.
on the stage during the talent show. But
I didn't see that episode, but I'm gonna have to go back and try to check that out. We try to like. I remember there was a time Bobby and I were binge watching that every morning
mm,
before school. So, um, get him in the right mindset. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So,
right.
but I think eventually we ran out of episodes because they were still playing on the air, and so we weren't, getting
Mm.
the old
I
seasons.
I felt like at least the last few seasons, because I stopped watching it. I think because one, we got rid of cable and we were just streaming
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and
Yeah.
again, funny show, but it became very, very, very formulaic,
Sure. Yeah.
and to the point where it was a lot of cut cut scene, like, like jumped here, no, I don't think so, no, no, like just kind of going back and forth,
Uh-huh.
and it was like that was the thing that was laughing at, because
Mm-hmm.
of that, rather. But if you didn't do that and you just pulled back and you just had watched the scene unfold and the two of them were talking, it wouldn't have been nearly as funny. Like the
Yeah.
cuts made it funny anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'll take any of those 80s theme shows, just for the nostalgia.
It's interesting. I was having dinner earlier, and my wife says to me, "Did you know that Daniel Stern narrated The Wonder Years?" I was like, "Yeah."
I didn't know that. I didn't know
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't. Daniel Stern, gosh,
Yeah, yeah, from Home Alone.
yeah, a young guy at the time.
Yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
was the narrator on Wonder
Huh.
Years.
Oh,
Speaking
okay.
of 80s shows,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Well, that
Yeah.
was more 70s.
Was it?
Or no, was it
No.
60s? It
The
was
Wonder.
60s.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, the time frame in the show. Right,
Yeah, but
right,
it
right.
came
Yeah,
out in the 80s.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, Goldbergs was like the Wonder Years for the next,
Right.
generation, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Enjoyed it immensely. Just we enjoy Young Sheldon too for the same reason. So
Hmm. Never seen it.
yeah, definitely a funny show, worth
Hmm.
checking out.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll do that. Bob, I want to also point out, because we'd like to do birthdays of comic creators on here, and if you're listening on this when it comes out on June 19th, yesterday would have been birthday for Mark Gruenwald, and so I just want to you know uh, make a note, because Mark is was so important to the character of Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
As a writer for 10 years, as an editor for many years. He left a legacy behind, and just want to, point that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be a drastic oversight not to point out Mark's birthday and to commemorate everything he's contributed to the mythos.
Yeah, and we did really devote an episode to him. Episode 134 was an episode remembering Mark Gruenwald. And it was
Mhm.
right after, I guess, last year, when he was voted as the favorite Captain America writer in our bracket. And we had his wife, Catherine Schuler Grunwald, on the show to help kind of reminisce and talk through Mark personal stories and things like that. And we also had Jason Olson on that show, who was the writer of a book that was dedicated to um, Captain America and Mark Gruenwald specifically. And
Hmm.
so it was great having the two of them on talking about it. So if you haven't listened to episode 134, highly recommend you check it out. It was a really great story or it was a really great episode with a lot of personal stories.
And while you're at it, check out episode 1 through 132 as well. Those are pretty good.
And the 133 episodes that preceded it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
check
While
them
you're
all
at
out.
it.
While you're
Yeah.
at it,
If
check
you're
them
going to
out.
binge, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, let's what do you think? We should go ahead and get to this
Yeah,
episode.
I think probably listeners are eager for us to dive into this particular issue.
All right. As you mentioned, we are covering today What If Volume 1, Issue 44. It had a cover date of April 1984, but it released in January 17th, a few months earlier. And, Bob, just want to point out, because I think it's relevant to the story that we're covering today, that what was going on during that time period. Like, we were smack in the middle of the Reagan era, and the thing that was kind of still big at that time was the Russian scare, right? The Cold War.
Soviet scare, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, the Soviet
Yeah,
scare. Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I was I was in high school at the time. I was getting ready to ship off to military school for university. I was planning on a career in the military, and I remember like how everything, at least in my world, was focused on the big Soviet bear. Right.
Yeah.
I had my. Do you remember those? You may not remember. I still have it around here someplace. The Red Book. Do you remember the Red Book? You could get them
No.
at Barnes and Nobles at the time. Um,
At the time, there was a Barnes and Noble in mid '80s. I
I
don't
think
remember
there
that.
was. Yeah,
No,
it
I don't know.
was. Maybe it was. Yeah, I think there was a Barnes and Nobles. In any case, the Red Book was sort of a soft cover, 8.5 by 11 format book, maybe about a half an inch thick. And basically, it was published every year by the US government, and it detailed Soviet military strength. In fact, it was called Soviet military power.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
flip through it, you could learn all about Soviet naval forces, air force, army forces, rocket forces, even and I remember this very specifically in the issue that I have that I bought when I was in high school, probably 1984. It talked about the Buran, which was their knockoff space shuttle. It was published every year, and you could go out and you could buy it because it was ever present on people's minds. This Soviet power, Cold War was still running hot at that time, and those of us who were in the military or were thinking about going to the military, we fully expected that we were going to be someday squaring off against the Soviets. Oddly enough, turned out never to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thankfully, thank God, right?
Thankfully, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but other fish to fry, right? As they say,
What?
other fish to fry. There's
What?
always something, Rick. Right?
Okay. If you're
Yeah,
saying if it's not the Russians, it would have been somebody else.
that's right. If it wasn't the Soviets, it was somebody else. It's
I know
always
you
going to be.
keep correcting me.
Yeah, it's going to be somebody else.
Yes. I want to just point out that Sting during this time wrote a song and he said, I hope the Russians love their children too. He didn't say the Soviets. He
Right?
said, I hope the Russians love their
Yeah.
children too. All right.
Well,
So
yeah.
just pointing that out.
All right. Well, maybe he didn't care about the Estonians and the Lithuanians and the Latvians and the Georgians and the Moldovans and the Ukrainians, whatever. But as long as the Russians love their children, but whatever.
There was a great song. Speaking of Billy Joel, uh, on the Stormfront album, which was his second to last album, I want to say, and it was called Leningrad. and it's a story of him
Vaguely sounds
going
familiar.
over to Russia
Yeah.
and meeting um a clown, of someone who performed as a
Uh-huh.
clown for children, and you know the clown's daughter and his daughter got together, and it was just like a song about how we're all human, we're all
Huh.
people, we all have
Yeah.
it's the same wants
That's
and
true.
desires in life and things like that,
Yeah.
and it was a good song, and that's the thing with Sting, was like, I hope the Russians love their children too, and so that they don't do anything, we don't do anything.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I know. Those
and
sorts of
all of
songs bear listening to over and over again.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and all of that is pertinent to today's story, I'd like
Hmm.
to think, because we're going to get into that. So the writer of this story is Peter Gillis, penciler Sal Buscema. So Sal's no stranger to Captain America, right? He was a penciler on Cap for many, many years. Inker Dave Simmons, colorist George Rossos, letterer John Morelli, editor Ralph Macchio. And so, um, on this particular story, I don't have a solicitation for you, Bob.
Well, that's not going to work, Rick.
No?
Let's just cancel the episode. I mean,
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
you know how much I look forward to those.
I do. Maybe I should have written one. But it seems like too much work, like,
Yeah,
the
I
doing
know.
copy and marketing and stuff like that. It's like, I do that all day. I don't have to
Yeah,
come here and write something.
sure, sure. I
Uh,
get it. I get it.
okay. Do you want to take the listeners through the cover?
Sure, I'd love to. It's a striking cover, right? I mean, I think it's one of those that a lot of folks, it stands out to them. For a lot of folks, it is a favorite. Of all the, I think of all of the what ifs, I think at least in the first volume, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think this is a watercolor cover by Bill Sienkiewicz, and it's got Cap dead center, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but before we get to that, though, I do want to mention the background. The background's got a number of horizontal stripes of different colors, and they range from sort of a lilac blue in the upper top of the cover, down to sort of like that, yeah,
Lilac blue.
down to
Eh,
a sunburst orange at the lower margin, with shades of different colors between those, sort of a
Oh no, take us
rose,
through each one, Bob. I want to hear the other renditions here.
So anyway, a number of horizontal stripes with three stripes in particular, those in the middle,
Uh-huh.
1960, 1970, and 1980. So I think we are led to believe that these represent different decades in Cap's life, or at least within the history of the country. But in the foreground, that's where we get to see Cap, and we get to see Cap standing in a puddle of water, and he's got water dripping off his shield, which he's being held in his right hand. Water's dripping off his gauntlets, and he's got sort of a placid look on his face. So, we don't know what's happening here. We know that he's soaking wet, and so maybe we're led to believe that he's either just got pulled out of the Hudson River, or maybe he just got defrosted. So,
I think we're definitely led to believe he got depressed because it says we're revived today, right? We
well,
all know the
okay,
story of Steve Rogers being frozen,
right.
and if he was revived today, here he is defrosting. I don't think there's any mystery, Bob.
All right. All right. Well, I was, just trying to not be a spoiler, Rick. But
Okay.
okay. All right. It's a great cover, and lots of folks love this cover. It's a bit of an oddity because I think it's a watercolor cover. It's a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, which we don't see a lot of Cap work for him on the cover. So, um, yeah, it's a great piece of art.
It is. It is a classic cover. I would love to own this cover. I would imagine this cover probably would go, somewhere in that 60 to 80 some $1,000 range. I'm just spitballing here, but
Yeah.
there would be some people out there paying pretty penny for this. Um, and all right, two little nitpicks. Um,
No, 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 Rick.
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna go.
Okay. All right, do it.
The first one is the shield. I don't see any curvature to it. It just seems like a very flat shield. So, but Bill has a he's not realism. You know what I mean? Like, so he
Mm-hmm.
has more of an art a
Uh-huh.
kind of art style, right? It's like a
Sure.
and so I could totally overlook that, but it does stand out to me. But the other one, Bob, the other one, my pet
Yeah.
peeve.
Is it going to be the well, before we get to that though, so you think the size of the shield is okay?
I think the size is slightly small.
Uh-huh.
Just a slightly small. I mean, it depends. If you want to put it on his back and put a jacket over him, then it's the ideal size.
Yeah.
But it could possibly use another ring around it,
Yeah.
size
Okay.
wise. What do
All
you
right.
think?
Yeah, I think it's a little on the smaller size. I mean, to me, it stands out as not being quite up to the circumference it should be.
Hmm.
But I think you're right. I mean, I think it's a very artistic style of
Hmm.
Bill's, and so we're not looking for precision here. But I think I know where you're going to go. And is it going to be the stripes, Rick?
Oh, you know it, Bob.
Yeah.
So my pet peeve is that the stripe that is underneath, like that goes from the belt buckle to the star,
Hmm.
needs to be red, right? That's what the editorial mandate has been, and some colorists have, forgotten that or taken liberties or something like that. So not only is it not, but it's not directly under his star and above the buckle. It's kind of almost at slight angle.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say is, you know what? Bill was going for, like, he just came out of the ice. He hasn't like,
He's disheveled
he
here.
hasn't fixed his
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
attire yet, right?
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, he's a little
Do you know what a gig line is?
a gig line.
Yeah.
Oh, hold
Do
on. Can you just say giggity giggity?
No, I can't. But so have you heard that expression, a gig line?
Uh-uh.
So in the military, you pay very close attention to your uniform, your
Uh-huh.
appearance, right? And so the gig line is when your where your shirt buttons up, and there's that line that goes
Yeah,
up,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
lines up precisely with the leading edge of your belt buckle, which
Okay.
lines up with your pants zipper. And so, like, you pay attention to that all the time to ensure that your gig line is perfectly. And so when I see this, and I'm like, the buckle is like off center from
Mm-hmm.
like one of those stripes,
Mm-hmm.
it screams like his gig line's off. And
Okay,
it's
so I'm
very
not the only one.
no, it's very disconcerting to me, that I don't really, I don't wear
Thank
that
God
much.
he's not saluting.
Exactly. Don't even get me going on that. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing jumps out at me. It really tweaks my obsessiveness when it comes to that.
So when you said, have you ever heard of the gig line? I
Mhm.
was thinking of you know the expression zhuzhing
No, I don't.
on
I don't.
okay. So
Yeah.
zhuzhing is if you had a dress shirt on
Uh huh.
and then you had a sweater over top of your dress
Uh
shirt,
huh.
and then you would roll up the sleeve on the sweater, and then
Yeah.
you would cuff
Oh
the
my.
dress shirt over top of, you
That's
roll up the dress shirt so it cuffs
yeah.
over the
That's a
end of
lot of
the
layering. Yeah.
right, and you push up your sleeves a little bit, so
Uh huh.
it's not whatever. That's called zhuzhing. uh
I had no idea.
I didn't know that either.
Okay.
A coworker of mine, she's a lot more fashionable sense
Uh huh.
than me, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's you did a good job." And I was like, "Oh yeah," I said, "Yeah, I did a really good job. I zhuzhed all over myself."
I thought you were going to say, stop zhuzhing me.
uh,
Oh, that's great.
uh,
You had an HR appointment
HR,
after that.
they have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Um, other thing about this cover, though, Bob.
Yeah.
So the Captain America is the logo from the current Captain America series at this time, which was, by the way, this is the J.M. DeMatteis, Mike Zeck, John Beatty time period. And then also up in the corner box is the Captain America by Mike Zeck that you would see on Captain America. So if you weren't careful and you didn't really pay attention, you wouldn't know that this was a what if issue because it has the Captain America logo, it has the Captain America corner box, it has Captain America big and bold on the cover. Uh, you know, if I was a comic retailer, I would have put this right next to the Captain America, so that people be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I got to pick that up too."
Yeah, that's a good that's smart maybe smart marketing here, right?
That's called merchandising, Bob.
I'm merchandise. Oh, nice.
Yes.
I love when you use the lingo. Do the
All
lingo again.
right. You learned a word today.
Yay! I learned too.
Yeah.
Don't me.
All right, so we get to the opening splash page, and it is I'm gonna say his name wrong. Gosh, you know what? I know there's a what if TV series, and he says his name. Is it Watu?
Yeah, I think it's a Watu, right?
Is it Uwatu or just Watu?
I thought it was Watu.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I should have probably gotten that
Hmm.
figured out. Um, so here's the Watcher, and he's up there. And Bob, for those who aren't familiar with the Watcher, would you describe him, please?
Yeah, he's a large man, and he is hairless, and he's got a very blocky head, and he's got a blue robe on with one of those very high collars that almost go up to the crown of his head. So,
Hmm.
and in this particular image, he's got a gold brooch that is connecting his cape around his neck.
Very nice. And he always in the What If series, he likes to introduce and explain what's going on. He's like the narrator of the story. And, just to set up expectations for those who aren't familiar with What If, it's essentially taking a situation and what if something slightly changed? What would the outcome be? Right? Like the butterfly effect. And so the stories are always, different versions of a story that we're familiar with. So in this case, it is uh, Steve Rogers at the end of World War II. He gets frozen in a block of ice and he's in suspended animation. And on this splash page, there he is, and he's being worshipped by Eskimos who, think of him as some sort of deity. And so we have the Watcher explaining what is going on here. I am the Watcher, and I have observed closely how Steve Rogers, the man called Captain America, fought ceaselessly for the freedom and liberty of the common man in two different eras of American history. But what if your world were denied that protection in one of those eras? What if Captain America were not revived until today? From the last days of World War II until the beginning of the present era, Captain America stood in the Arctic frozen in suspended animation. There he would have stayed, worshipped by the Eskimos as a holy totem. And we turn the page. Had not the Submariner, filled with fury at a recent defeat, chanced upon their rights. And so at this point, we have the Submariner, Prince Namor, and he's lashing out angrily, and he takes the frozen idol and he tosses it into the Atlantic Ocean. And as we all know, over time, the warmer waters, the ice begins to melt, and then the Avengers find him in that submarine, and the rest is history, as they say. And so, and I'll kind of skip this part because I think all of us kind of know this story. We all know as Cap goes on and how he goes on to fight the Red Skull and various villains, and he takes on partner with Sam Wilson and Jack Monroe, um, and the Watcher then goes on to say, "So it was with your world, But there are worlds besides your own, realities that diverge at critical points in your history. There is an Earth, for example, where Captain America's resurrection did not take place. In that world, the submariner took another course through the ocean, a more southerly track, and so missed the Eskimos and their idol altogether. The Avengers hunted their quarry in vain, but finally realized they had lost him completely. And there's the submarine that we all know, right? With Thor and Iron Man, Giant Man, and the Wasp. And Giant Man says, "Let's head home, guys. We'll face them another day." And the northern tribesmen mounted their idol on a sled and took it with them on their long migrations. The Avengers continued to carve out a legend of their own, defeating menaces such as the Lava Men, Kang the Conqueror, and the Masters of Evil. But there came a fateful day when they assembled. Frankly, Jan and I would like to take a breather from the group to get our personal lives together. Whilst I have pressing matters to attend to in Asgard, what say you, Iron Man? Well, since we can all reach one another should a need arise. I don't believe it. It's Rick Jones. You're just going to disband the Avengers like that? But you were a team. This isn't football, Rick. Some of us need more than the locker room. And Rick Jones, an Asgardian, knows that a saga must needs reach a close. And so, lacking a central unifying spirit, the Avengers quietly disband. The years pass, wars begin and end. Elections are held and decisions made, for better and for worse. And then we got a newspaper here, Bob. What's it say?
It says this is the Daily Star, and it's reporting in its headline that the president will visit Red China.
And let's just read some of these things, right? It says prices, uh, dirndls go up.
Dirndls.
Pat Redding takes summer vacation.
Huh.
Oh, another summer vacation? I don't know. And then President waves. What president does that look like?
Well, I don't know. I'm assuming that's Richard Milhouse Nixon, but
No, that's Reagan, dude. Look at the hair.
oh, all right, okay,
Right? He's got that
yeah.
wavy kind of,
Oh yeah, right, okay,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So reading this newspaper, we hear someone say, "Why that crummy? He's selling us down the river to those commies." Because again, it says President will visit Red China. I thought I could trust this guy, but politicians are all alike. They're got no guts to stand up for what they believe in, if they believe in anything in the first place. And so, what's going on, Bob? What room are we in? It looks different.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say right now, but there's some machinery and some tubes with some liquids coursing through those tubes and some levers and buttons. So it's some sort of a scientific laboratory
Mm-hmm.
or factory or something.
Yeah, and this guy, he's wearing green pants and a green dress shirt and an orange baseball cap, and he just takes the newspaper and he throws it on the ground. I guess out of disgust. I may only be a glorified janitor around here, but I know a commie plot when I see one. They think I don't know what they're doing around here? Or maybe that I'll just do as I'm told and mind my own business. And then he takes like a card and puts it in a slot and light goes off. So, it's something to go into a secure area, right? And leave it all up to politicians. Well, this is America, not Russia or China, and I'm going to do something. Now, his face is in the shadows. I find that interesting.
Right. Yeah. We don't get to see any really indication of his facial structure. So
Yeah. The time has come for Captain America and Bucky to live again. What? What's going on here, Bob?
well, this is a shocking development. So he walks into the room that he just opened with his key card, and in these looks like stasis tubes of some sort, we see Captain America in one and Bucky in another. And there's some gas floating around in there with them, but they appear to be in some sort of suspended animation.
Yeah. And it's almost like Bill Sienkiewicz saw this cap when he did the cover because the stripe is not above the belt buckle. It's still kind of like at an angle thing, and it's also white.
Right. It's Sal's fault.
I always felt what they did to you was wrong, Cap, but it wasn't my place to say so. But now I'm doing my duty, Cap. And then he stands at attention and salutes the suspended animated Cap. How's the salute, Bob?
It's really good.
Yeah?
I don't want to like this guy, right? But I like the salute.
All right, he's dead on, huh? I've serviced this machine enough times. Let's see. And he pushes some buttons. And then the glass tubes that are over top of them raises into the ceiling. It's working. The reviving gases are being released. I've given America back its heroes. And then they just fall. Oh, but they've collapsed. Did I do something wrong? Have I killed them? Cap, speak to me. Cap. Dear Lord, I've destroyed America's last chance. But Cap starts to whisper. No, no, you can't do this. Where am I? What happened? I've released you from your suspended animation, Cap. America has need of you now, like never before. Yes, I remember now. But wait, who are you? Why have you done this? And then Bucky speaks up. Yeah, don't go. I'm not important, Cap. Just think of me as an American. The world will be strange to you now, but you'll see what needs to be done. The world will be strange? How long have we been asleep? We'll find out shortly, Buck. At least they stored my shield here as well. But are we ready for the outside world yet? The question is, lad, whether it's ready for us. Dun dun dun. For whatever form the forces of tyranny and subversion take, they will find Captain America ready to fight them. Amen to that, Cap. Amen. What do you think of
I think Bucky's like, and Bucky too, Cap,
that?
right here.
And so it is, not very long after. We see a bank heist, Bob, and they're wearing stockings over their face.
They are wearing pantyhose over their face. Yes,
Well,
yes,
does that
with the
work?
with the feet still attached.
Does that work?
I think it does work, but I think why not just like cut it like a tube? You don't have to have the foot part dangling off your head, but whatever.
Maybe they have a fetish.
I want it. My wife says I got to bring these back.
Yeah.
He's a loner.
I'll just stay nice and calm and nobody will get hurt. Cut the noise, man, and let's move it. You hear that, man? They tripped the alarm. No problem. We'll be long gone before the time the heat shows up. And there's an alarm going off, Bob.
Clang, 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 clang.
And then there was a driver there, waiting the getaway car. How'd it go? Not a hitch. Now let's split. I figure there must be 100,000 here. Easy. Now, 100,000, Bob. Was that a lot of money back in 1981?
We're not had back in 1981, Rick, but yeah, I guess it probably was a good haul for a bank robbery.
Yeah. What do you think 100,000 in 1981 versus today's money would be?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe 500,000.
What? 5 times? Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, you know what? Let's base it on this, Bob. The comic back then
Mm-hmm.
was what was it?
There's a buck, right?
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was $1. And today, $5 gets you a comic. So if you just base it on comic math,
Right. Comic
five times the amount.
Yeah, there you go.
Whoa. All right. And then all of a sudden there's a loud noise on the front of the car, Bob. Legs? Some fruit and fancy boots. Just move. Come on, gun it. Whoever it is, he can't stop us now. The name's Captain America, scum, and you're about to learn what that means to criminals. It means justice and punishment. And he takes his shield and he punches it through the front windshield. A superhero. Well, you're just dead meat, man. And he pulls his gun, but Cap hits him with the shield. Your kind never changes, do you? And then Bucky opens up the door and pulls out the other guy. Here's one rat off the sinking ship, partner. And these babies make three, partner. And he takes, remember he punched through that windshield and then he reaches in and he grabs the two guys and just pulls them out. That's some strength right there, Bob.
Yep, burn. Yep.
A little something interesting about Cap's costume on here. Do you notice it?
Sure do. His the back of his torso is completely blue.
You don't say. Well, if you listened to episode 6, all the way back in episode 6, Bob, like
Right.
three years ago,
Yeah.
3.5 years ago, we covered the Steve Englehart, Sal Buscema 4-part series where they reintroduced the Cap of the 1950s. And it was basically a retcon story that Steve came up with of like, how how did if Cap was frozen at the end of World War II, who was this Captain America in the 50s?
Right.
That and that was basically Steve Englehart was tasked with finding a way to explain that. So he explained it very much like what you're seeing now, in that there was a different Captain America that took over the mantle.
Yeah.
And what was his name?
William Burnside.
William Burnside. And his sidekick?
Jack Monroe.
Yes. And so they weren't actually given those names during this story, but um further retcons, explain those. But anyway, so that's where this story is. And so in Captain America 153 through 156, which we cover panel by panel in episode 6, check that out. Yeah, Sam Wilson notices the same thing, that on the back of Cap's costume, there are no red and white stripes. It's pure blue. And that's when he knew it couldn't have been the right Cap.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, look, great consistency by Sal Buscema here.
Yep. And so the police come out and they're like, what's going on? And then we got the three thieves all unconscious, like either in the grips of their hands or on the ground. I like the one guy who's on the ground with his face down and on the sidewalk, and
Yeah.
he's got his butt up in the air, and his way his arms are just laying there,
Yeah.
like he just got dropped.
Yeah.
Anybody in the market for 3 used bums? Well, the money, I believe, is yours, gentlemen. It can't be. Not Captain America and Bucky. Whoa. What? How? Yes, my friend, it really is us. Where we've been all these years and how we stayed so young must remain a secret for now. But yes, we're back. You were my hero when I was a kid, Cap. Nobody could fight like you. All I could say is, Cap, Cap, you're really back. This is a great day for all of us. I'll try to live up to your expectations, friend. We have to go, but don't worry. You haven't seen the last of Captain America and Bucky. And in the months that follow, Cap and Bucky do indeed acquit themselves with honor, besting such foes as the Serpent Squad, the Plant Man, the Porcupine, even the menace of the Yellow Claw himself. These were all stories that were done by Sal Buscema and Steve Englehart. And but instead, it's William Burnside, not Steve Rogers.
Hmm.
And they're proving themselves true heroes in the eyes of the public. Nor does this man shun the spotlight in the manner of other superheroes. And so we see Cap and Bucky sitting on a talk show. And there's an old white man with white hair sitting there. Not sure who that's supposed to be. kind of look, would resemble, I guess, Johnny Carson more than anyone else. But he's called Phil, so I don't know if it's supposed to be Phil Donahue. So then there's Cap, because Phil Donahue was huge back then.
He was indeed, yeah.
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 And it was a daytime show, and there is daytime behind them. So
Yeah.
maybe it's Phil Donahue. I don't know. And one day I'd love to meet these new superheroes and be proud to fight alongside them. Cap, everyone is intensely curious about your suspended animation. Why won't you say more? There's a reason, Phil. It was a freak accident. Until we can figure out what happened, we can't risk letting the enemy duplicate the process and put us back under. So tell me, Cap, how does an old Nazi buster find it living now in today's society? To tell the truth, Phil, not a lot has changed. Evil and good don't change with women's hemlines. Oh, there's an old saying, right? Now, do you want to explain that to some of our listeners who may not quite get the reference?
Well, I don't. Is it an old saying, Rick? I mean, I know I know what he's a metaphor here about women's hemlines going up and down with fashions and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
right,
Yeah, I see it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the principles of good and evil, at least from this cap's viewpoint, are set in stone.
But there's one thing that's bothered me. During the big one, America stood united against the Axis. There was a real sense of loyalty to America's ideals, of patriotism. What disturbs me is how much this has been eroded. When students, minority groups, and others start shouting about burning down America, it makes me wonder if they know what they're doing. The enemies of freedom, of America, are still very much alive. And this agitation, even if well meant, only helps them. It makes it harder for the good guys, if I'm worthy to be called that, to do their jobs. Thanks, Cap. Now I'd like to ask Bucky. I heard you got invited to Studio 54. What'd you think of disco, Bucky? Having grown up on the jitterbug, I found it a little tough to judge. But what really upset me was when I found out that I completely missed out on miniskirts. And then the audience laughs, right?
Well, of course, yeah.
You poor boy. We'll be back in a moment. But there's another side to this glamour in a slightly shabby boarding house in Queens. Well, that's it, Steve. We're down to our last $10. What are we going to do? Couldn't we go to the Fantastic Four or somebody? I don't know if we could trust them. You mean because they might dope out that we're not the original Captain America and Bucky? Not just that, but the enemies of America seem to have burrowed in so deep, we've got to be extremely careful. The news media, so many public figures, we've got to keep our images absolutely above reproach. Well, the temporary typing and messenger jobs we can get barely pay the rent on this dump. I know, Buck, but in any war, there are sacrifices to be made. I just wish. Now, who could be knocking at our door? And who is it, Bob?
So he's a an older gentleman. I would say probably it looks to be in his 60s. I can say older because I'm still in my 50s. And he's wearing what was a very common in that time. I remember my dad sporting one of these sort of dark brown business suits
Mm-hmm.
with a tie and a white shirt. He's got glasses on. His hair is slicked back. So he's got a certain look that strikes me as familiar. I can't quite put my finger on it, who he looks like, but he reminds me of somebody. Is it
Okay.
jogging your memory at all?
I don't know.
No.
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Barnes, my name is Quentin Hatterman, and I'm from the Committee to Regain America's Principles. Perhaps you've heard of it. We are a group of concerned citizens trying to save America from moral bankruptcy, a purpose which you share as Captain America and Bucky. What are you talking about, pal? Come. I've read the government files on you. The replacement Cap and Bucky of the 50s, who were found to be a political embarrassment. You're crazy, Buster. Now, please, we're on the committee are just as outraged at what the government did to you as you are. We believe in what you stand for. All we want to do is lend you our support. No strings attached. Okay, Mr. Hammer, if we had to be found out, I'm glad it was by a group of real patriots, real Americans. Then you have heard our positions. You won't regret this, Cap, not one bit. And they shake hands. And then we cut to a TV commercial. Bob, do you want to do the top? Because I know that's your voice.
The following is a paid political announcement.
This is Captain America speaking. You know my partner and myself as superheroes, fighters for freedom. But America needs more than superheroes if the fight is going to be won. It needs fearless, honest men and government as well. I found Norman Chadwick to be such a man. Give him your vote. It's a vote for America. And then we cut to campaign trail. And here's Cap and Bucky up on a podium on a stage. I know some of you are saying, what does a superhero know about politics? Any more than movie stars or rock singers? Why should we listen to him? What do I know about politics? I know what you know, that America is in deep trouble. We've lost so much. We're being torn apart. And I know it'll take guts to set America right again. I know that America needs Norman Chadwick in the U.S. Senate. And then the crowd goes wild. And then they cut to um, a TV news show. Today on Report of the Nation, we have the front-running candidate for the Senate, Norman Chadwick, and his most visible supporter, Captain America. Captain, what do you say to the charges that you are using the media status of a superhero to promote a sideshow campaign for Mr. Chadwick? Jim, you know how hard it is to buck both the Republican and Democratic parties with their resources? I'm just giving the voters a better chance to make up their minds. Captain, you're quoted as saying civil rights and disarmament groups in this country are supporting the communist cause. What substantiation do you have for this accusation? What I said, Mike, was maybe the members of those groups ought to think seriously as to whether or not their actions contribute to the strengthening of our communist enemies. That's all. I'm no red baiter. What do you say to the accusations that you were associated with the psychopathic imposter Captain America, who surfaced briefly during the 1950s? And that's when Chadwick speaks up. There hasn't been one shred of evidence to easy Norm. I'll answer for myself. I don't expect people to trust or follow me because I wear a famous costume. I could be anybody under this mask, after all. All I ask is that I be judged for my actions and to listen to what I say as one should any American who wishes to be heard. And what happens? Chadwick sweeps Senator race. And he goes on to make some changes while in the Senate. The National Identity Card bill I've introduced speaks to a vital crisis, the crowding out of the American working man from the job market in his own country. With this card, the government will at last be able to identify and deal with illegal aliens and their unscrupulous employers who are undercutting the American workers and putting them out of work. And we cut to like a, radio.
The initial support for the Chadwick bill is fast eroding due to the storm of protests from the ACLU, the NAACP, and various Hispanic groups.
I'm so glad you did that instead of me, Bob, because I would have said NAACP. And then there's Captain America supporting this. He's holding that card, right? A card for Americans, a plan for America. I've heartened that my colleagues listen to the voice of the American people, urging them to support my bill. But we must not falter now. I have proposed a federal jobs bureau. And then Cap goes on to explain this, which will ensure that each and every American be given a fair shake at earning a living, at being able to stand up as a self-supporting member of society. I urge you to write your congressman or senator. And then we cut to a meeting, and it's African Americans, pretty much 100%. And there's an older gentleman saying, and we can't give an insensitive government tools which can and will be used to keep minorities from advancing in the job market. The black community will not stand for it. We must show America dramatize the country's alarming swing to the right with dignity and righteous anger. Are you with me? All the way, Reverend. Just like Selma in Washington, we march. And so the Harlem streets fill. The chanting, marching crowds draw adherents, opponents, reporters, and a phalanx of riot police, in front of whom stands a grim faced Captain America and Bucky. Are you aware, Reverend, that you're marching without a parade permit? The law says you have to disperse, but maybe we can talk this out. We're always willing to talk to those who are willing to listen, Captain. This is a non-violent, orderly demonstration. All we ask is to be unobstructed in making our point. Well, I'll talk to the police chief, but the law's the law. And then we see a scope on top of Cap's head. And up on top of a roof, there is a sniper. And the sniper's expert finger squeezes the trigger calmly. I've always stood for the Bill of Rights, Reverend. But honestly, don't you think all this rabble rousing is a bit? And then there's a fire, Bob.
Crack!
Too far, and Cap gets hit near, like, grazes his head. And Bucky yells, Cap, he's been shot. You lousy traitors. He was trying to reason with you, and you shoot him. You've killed Captain America. And he's holding Cap's body in his arms. And then the police that were behind Cap react. That does it. Let's get those lousy black radicals. They killed Cap. And one incident was all it took to ignite the destructive rage that has been growing in the black community. From Harlem, it spread to Watts, to Detroit, to the south side of Chicago. And soon the clenched fist of rage was met by the steel gauntlet of retaliation. We're seeing tanks in the streets, Bob, and fire, and buildings being destroyed. And the summer was made hotter by the flames of burning cities. But Cap's not dead.
Oh, thank goodness.
So we cut to him in a hospital bed. He's got his mask on, but he's wearing a hospital gown. I want you to know I bear the man who shot me no malice. My only concern is to keep this great country of ours from tearing itself apart. I want you all to support the Emergency Security Powers Act of Senator Chadwick's for the peace we need to find a solution. Now, Bob, that sounds reasonable.
I mean, it does sound reasonable. He's just asking for a temporary martial law to, set things at ease so they can talk this out.
Yeah. I mean, it's reasonable.
Yeah, of course.
And Cap's saying it, so, right? It's believable.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see Cap. He's doing a little better. He's out of the bed. He's in a wheelchair. Billy here is wearing the symbol of the Sentinels of Liberty, a group dedicated to the ideals I've always fought for. Boys, girls, moms, dads, it's a way to stand up for America in these troubled times. Won't you join? He's asking people to wear shirts to make sure that they stand out amongst the crowd.
Yeah, to be Sentinels of Liberty, Rick. We all know what the Sentinel of Liberties were supposed to do, right? To ferret out sabotage and spies and agents provocateur in our communities.
Yeah. I have my card right here, Bob.
Well, there you go. There
Right?
you go. Yeah,
There
you
we go.
You have the principles of liberty there.
I do. In the meantime, rioters are getting some really violent action towards them. And Cap goes on TV, and this is an interesting look for Cap, don't you say?
Yeah, it looks good on him.
Yeah. So he has his he's shirtless, but he has his mask on. So a mask with shirtless is always a good look. But then when you add to it some bandages going across his chest and shoulder, no one shudders more than I at hearing martial law declared throughout our nation. But hard times call for hard measures, and the Congressional Committee on Public Safety needs our support and not our anger. So let's pull together for the duration, America. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Reasonable steps, Rick. Reasonable
Reasonable.
steps. Just got to restore order.
Bob, you ready for this?
All right.
The years pass.
Mm.
Years. And then on a day in that world, which corresponds to your present 1983. Okay, so when we say years too, a U.S. Navy nuclear sub is on patrol in the North Atlantic. Captain, sonar reports an object off the port bow. No engines. Probably just another ice floe, Lieutenant. But this one's man-sized. Shouldn't we? Very well. Since those terrible storms in the Arctic, all sorts of stuff has been turning up. But if it's exciting as an old tire, I'll be astounded. Holy crow, sir, look, it's a man in a block of ice. How the devil? Well, mister, get a detail and bring him on board. What's the story, Doc? What is it, Bob? Who's there?
Well, it looks to be a Captain America with his uniform on, but his military attire sort of ripped up and shredded, revealing it with his cap shield on his chest.
I almost don't know what to think, Captain. And then there's three sailors there with the captain and the medic, and they're dressed in sailor attire, right? They got the blues on, and then
Yep,
they got their white sailor cap. Can I ask a question?
you sure can.
Um, why did they wear those
The
in the
caps
sub?
in the caps. Normally they wouldn't wear them in the sub.
Okay,
Yeah, we call it a cover, not a hat, right? And so you generally wear your cover outside. When you're
right.
inside, you're undercover already.
Yeah. So why are they wearing it?
Um, Aesthetics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do. Look at his lousy costume. He's one of those blasted sentinels of liberty. It belongs back in the drink. At ease, Cohen. Doc? Acute hypothermia. By all medical science, he should be dead. But there's a faint heartbeat. I don't care. There'll be no sentinels aboard this ship. It's his kind that burned my parents' store, that beat them up in the street. It's his kind that put in the Jews back into camps. Easy, Sammy. I know how you feel, but we can't just let 'em die. Orders. Then you might as well toss me overboard, Captain, because I'm not staying on this ship with that. You're a sailor, Cohen. Don't descend to their level. We must tend to him, out of humanity, out of duty. It was a lot of smooth talking that got us into this mess. And so one of the other sailors, he goes and he grabs a wrench and he goes to bash in Captain America's head. And I'm going to stop this racist problem right now. Where'd that hand come from? Sure enough, before that big wrench, and what size wrench would you say that is, Bob?
A super large.
It's technical. Cap puts his hand up and grabs the wrist and stops him. All right, Nazis, what have you done with Bucky? I'll give you Nazis, you slimy faced monster. You're going to pay for a lot of things. And four sailors rush him. Get the lousy sentinel. I don't know who you are, but you just picked on the wrong man. And he throws all four of them off. And if you think you could stop me with pipes and wrenches, and he tosses his shield, I suggest you think again. And the shield ricochets in a warning shot, essentially. Either that or, he's been under suspended animation. His aim's a little off. I'm going to go with warning shot.
I think the warning shot makes sense.
Yeah. I ain't never seen anything like that. And then the captain speaks. And he's using his pipe to point. You may not have, sailor, but I have. There was a man in World War II that threw a shield like that. You've heard the rumors just like I have. That whole suspended animation story was true. But the real Cap was never found. And our buddy never did what this man just did. What's going on here? Quickly, mister, what year do you think it is? Why, it's 1945, of course. I knew it. I always hoped it. Now it's come true. Don't you see, men? The Cap who turned our country into a nightmare is an evil impostor. This man we revived is the one true original Captain America. I could have told you that, gentlemen. Well, brace yourself, Cap. You want to know the score? I've got a little horror story to tell you. It's all about America. And Steve Rogers listens. At the end of the tour of duty, the submarine docks at the reopened Brooklyn Navy Yard in New York for some carefree shore leave in the Big Apple. And so the captain is now dressed in his military dress, right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess the blue, they call it the blues. I think they're dress blues.
Oh, when I said the blues before, then you should have corrected me because I referred to what the the the
The sailors.
yeah.
Yeah, those are referred to as work denims.
Okay. All
But
right.
I.
Listen, dude, that's why you're here. You know this stuff. I don't know this stuff.
But yeah.
Well, I see we have the usual honor guard to welcome us home. Pay no attention to the men. And so Steve, he's dressed as a sailor, and he's got a bag over his shoulder like he's on leave. And can you describe the honor guard that he's referring to, Bob?
Yeah. So if you recall back when the imposter Cap was shot, he and Bucky were both had some lines of riot police behind them, and at that time the riot police were wearing blue police uniforms and they had on riot helmets. So what we're seeing now is really an evolution in the riot police, and so these guys are dressed in similar sorts of uniforms, but now they're army green, and the helmets that look a little bit like football helmets have an A, just like the one we see on Captain America's mask on the front of the helmet, and the cap wings on the side of their helmets. And then they've got a little A insignia on their collars.
Yep, I would say football helmets without the grid in front of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And those the wings on the side are painted on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been explained to Steve Rogers that the armed forces have ironically become the only refuge from the policies of the new power in the land, and so are kept watch over by the sentinels of liberty. You can see what has happened to freedom in our country, Cap. Yes, I also saw the insignia on their helmets, Skipper. Well, prepare yourself for something much worse. And they go into Midtown Manhattan. Armed guards on every corner. Guard towers, machine guns. Did the Nazis win the war? Not yet, Cap. Not yet. But how could the American people stand for all this? How can they accept it? Fear of the unknown, some glib verbs, and the American need to believe in a hero, Captain America. And one of the soldiers comes over. All right, citizen sailor. Security check. Papers, please. You know, it's funny. He was coming across as kind of rude, and then he says, please.
That's the training.
Yeah, they're in my kit. Everything in order, citizen? I was going to show the son of an old friend the town. Seaman First Class, Roger Stevens. Submarine, eh? Rough job, unless you happen to like living in a tin can with a bunch of blacks and Jews. And Steve didn't like that. And Skipper holds him back. Easy. A man like that, wearing my emblems. So, Bob, funny thing there. So he says, Seaman First Class. Now, I'm going to tell you a little funny story.
All right.
All right. So, my mom, after she retired, decided to do some volunteer work. And she did this in Wilmington, Delaware, where she would go in and go to the place where the ships came in like the harbor. And what would happen is these ships from other countries would need to get information on like while the ship's being unloaded, like, where do I go? Can, help with some information, help with getting cab rides, help with recommendations, perhaps maybe some, things like that. And the name of the place was the Seaman Center.
Okay.
And so it was We used to give my mom a hard time, like, Mom, you work at the Semen Center.
Never gets old, I'm sure.
I know.
Never got old.
There's our destination, the Daily Bugle building. You mean they still allows newspapers to publish? I thought they'd be the first to go. They're heavily censored, of course, under the Emergency Information Freedoms Act. But people still have to be convinced there's a First Amendment, so they allow token dissent. Then, of course, there's men you just can't silence, like the one you're about to meet, rough as sandpaper, but as strong an ally of freedom as you'll ever know. Who is it, Bob?
It's J.J. Jameson.
Yeah, Jay Jonah. So you can read the nameplate on my door. I ought to make you a proofreader. What do you want? I was doing a crossword puzzle in the Bugle and was puzzled by the clue for 76 down. The parts of the snake must be joined or die. It means be down by the delivery bay in 45 minutes. The driver knows what to do. Well, that's a nice little twist there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like J. Jonah Jameson's always been a bit of a jerk, right?
Okay, fair enough.
An unlikable character in many cases. Someone who's, in some cases, some people even look at him as a villain, right? The way he treats Spider-Man and goes after Spider-Man. And in some cases, he's even physically, gone after Spider-Man. And but here he's seen as a patriot, as someone who wants to fight back against this type of government.
Right.
It's kind of interesting.
It is. I mean, he has been portrayed once or twice, at least I think during World War II as a patriot, right? And he's always been a fan of Cap. So
That's true.
yeah.
And as a Daily Bugle delivery truck barrels north from Midtown, it carries more than papers. This is like London during the Blitz. Is all of Manhattan except for Midtown like this? Cap, Midtown is what they show on TV. To the rest of the nation, most of America still thinks everything's more or less normal. They support the government, fronted by their beloved Captain America. Here's where we get off, Cap. The truck can't afford to stop. Right behind you. Good Lord. Here's something that never gets on TV. The Harlem Wall. Bob, gotta describe this.
Yeah. So what we see is some broken down buildings in the foreground, but immediately behind it, we see a very tall wall. It's probably what 30, 40 feet tall, topped with concertina wire. And then on the other side of that, we see a guard tower, and up in that guard tower, we see a couple soldiers with some long guns, and then some buildings beyond that.
What about the other superheroes you told me about? Won't they do something about this? They've been maneuvered around. The Fantastic Four were relocated to Arizona when the riots broke out, and we can't get to them. Iron Man vanished when Stark International was nationalized. Cap has hoodwinked a few. Through here, Steve. Comes up inside the wall. Welcome to hell, Cap. The blood freezes in Captain America's veins as he sees grinding poverty and despair that makes the worst sights of the Great Depression pale by comparison. What's going on here, Bob?
Well, we see a city street, and it's certainly an uncared for street. The windows are boarded up in the buildings, and the doors are broken off their frames. There's people in ragged clothes walking along. We see somebody picking through a trash can. We see other people sleeping on the sidewalk. One man is leaning up against a light pole. It is as described a city scene full of despair.
This is what it's come to, Cap, since you've been gone. But I didn't bring you here for the $2 tour. The Sentinels of Liberty don't come into Harlem, and Harlem is where the Second American Revolution is being planned. Our commander is General Fury, who went underground when the security organization was disbanded. There he is, flanked by his lieutenants. Spider Man's on the left. one of the superheroes who wasn't duped, thanks to Jameson. The other one is Snap Wilson, organizer of the Black Cadres. Well, that's cool. So we got Nick Fury in his Shield uniform, but I don't see any Shield insignia. But you know what I'm talking about? Like that
Hmm.
deep blue one with the orange uh, holsters and belts and things around that. And he's still got the eye patch, and he's got the stogie. He's on a he's on a some sort of radio transmission, and then you got Spider-Man there, but Spider-Man's wearing the Spider-Man costume without the mask.
Right. Yeah.
But what's even more interesting is that he has a rifle over his shoulder that somehow bends, and then he's got like a gondolier, right, of ammunition over his. What I
Right.
say?
A
Not a
bandolier.
gondolier.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
gondolier's a guy you
yeah,
find in
yeah.
Venice.
The bond. What's it called?
A bandolier.
Bandolier.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, not the gondolier. Um, but and then there's a flag up on the wall, Bob. Which one is that?
It is the "Don't Tread on Me" flag.
Yeah, General. You remember me, Captain Johansson? I've got someone here who just might be more important to our cause than any man alive. Is that so? Go ahead. I could use some cheering up. Hold it, General. Something ain't kosher here about this guy. Old Snap smells a rat. Snap Wilson, not Sam Wilson, Snap Wilson.
Right. Yeah.
And then he opens up the shirt and revealing Captain America's uniform underneath it. I thought I saw something peeking out from under his shirt. This man's a lousy sentinel of liberty. Well, Mr. Real American, you'll never leave here alive. Just give the word, General, and I'll blow this guy's head off. Hold it, all of you. There's something familiar about this guy. Can't put my finger on it, but the alarm bells are going off. General Fury? I know it may be hard to swallow, but you aren't related to a Sergeant Nick Fury, are you? Led a crack squad of Rangers called the Howling Commandos? That's it. But it just ain't possible. But it's you. But Steve Rogers can't. I mean, what in Sam Hill's going on? This is the man we found frozen in ice. A man who never betrayed the ways of liberty. The man truly worthy to wear these colors. The real Captain America. And a man who's ready to sign up. The wrongs I seen will take much more than one man to right. But I've got a name to clear, a costume to unsoil, and a country to die for. Cap, I don't know what miracle sent you, but you just might have come back to us at exactly the right time. You could actually tip the balance back before it's too late. In a week or so, the American First Party holds its national convention here in New York. If it comes off, it could just be the last nail in the coffin. Now, several days later, we're probably in some sort of chamber, in Washington, right? There's a it looks like a fancy chamber, and there's a big table. You remember the commission, Bob?
I sure do, Rick.
Right, where the commission was, and there was all these politicians standing up, sitting up at this table, looking down on Captain America. Well, we got that going on here, but this time these are some different characters. One of them is wearing a red robe reminiscent of the Secret Empire.
Number one.
Another one is wearing a green costume with a helmet on. What's that insignia on his chest?
It looks like the Serpent Society insignia or something.
Yeah. And then there's another one who's wearing an old Revolutionary War type wig,
Yeah.
right? And he's the one who's talking. And you realize the importance of the convention. And he's talking to Captain America, by the way. The the 50s one. Up until now, we have worked at best we could. We've moved things through Congress, our patriotic lodges, the secret empire, the Sons of the Serpent, and the National Force have helped in other ways. But with your influence, Captain, the America First Party will sweep the national elections. We will control the Congress outright and even the White House. and state legislators. Then we'll be able to return America to the pure and great nation our forefathers envisioned. Specifically, we'll be able to convene and control a new constitutional convention. There we shall strip the traitors of their absurd legalistic safeguards completely. But until then, it would all depend on you. My friends, I'm proud to have you as allies in the fight against the spies, traitors, and their dupes that have crippled America. Together, we can wrest control from the Jewish bankers and black radicals and the masters in Moscow and make this country the land of the free again. I won't let you down. Yes, Captain, don't let us down. With your unwitting help, I, William Torrey, shall be the country's next president and its first absolute monarch. So then it's days later, and the delegates to the American First Party's national convention throng into heavily guarded Madison Square Garden. And there's a young man walking up, and the guards stop him. Sorry, Buster, but an ordinary press pass isn't good enough. You got to have a green security pass or you don't get in. Oh, that. Sure, I got one. Just a sec. Here. And it's Peter Parker, and he fires some web into their faces. A trick. He didn't get by, did he? They'll have our hides. He couldn't have. Nobody could move that fast. Just another commie prank. That's the best they can do. Something about that web didn't do too well because they're actually pulling it off their face. I mean, that wouldn't happen with Spider-Man's real webbing, right?
That's a good point, Rick. Yeah.
And inside, we see Captain America up on the podium, and he's addressing the audience. And it's it's Madison Square Garden, right? I mean, it's huge. There's so many people there, and up on the stage with him are some costume characters, including Bucky. My fellow Americans, I'm glad the whole nation could join us for this new birth of hope for our torn and troubled nation. This day starts the new birth of freedom for the greatest country on earth. And to commemorate, the five of us are all here today. We, who you've come to know as the Freedom Five, although they need no introduction, they are the lovely and valiant Golden Girl, Hawkeye the Archer, the fearsome Hangman, and my old pal Bucky. Together, we've gathered to place in nomination the name of William, and Cap turns his head, looks up. What on earth? And then, wow, big splash page. Coming in through the rafters, Captain America, Spider-Man swinging in, and then behind him is that cadre that Snap Wilson was leading, and they're all swinging in too with their guns. Your time is coming, imposter. You're going to pay for your crimes and the hands of the real Captain America. And he jumps down on him, but fake Cap puts up a shield. You've twisted America, perverted using my name, and you'll pay dearly for that. No, this is just a commie trick, but I'll meet it head to head on. It's no trick. I'm the man you imitated, whose costume and name you took so you could lead this country into barbarism. Well, no longer. You're lying. I'm Captain America. You commies are clever, right down to the voice and rhetoric. Well, the American people will see through you after I knock your block back to Moscow. And so, two living, breathing images of America square off, equally determined, and the world may wonder, which is the real image? But the question now is, who will survive? And then Spider-Man goes after the others. I hope you guys aren't thinking of buzzing out on this dance. So how's about a few turns with me? Spider-Man, the word was that he was killed by the army. Who cares? Get the commie. You guys shouldn't believe everything you read in the Daily Bugle, but you're so gullible you believe Paul McCartney's dead, or that putting black men in wall ghettos is freedom. What? Paul McCartney's dead?
No, that's what you've been led to believe.
And do you know what he's referring to?
I don't know.
So, um, back when the Beatles were still putting out albums, their uh, Abbey Road. There's uh, the famous picture of the four Beatles crossing the street one
Right.
after another,
Yeah.
right? Then on the album, if you play it backwards, apparently there was a message saying
You,
that Paul
you
was dead,
you hear Satan. Yeah.
right? But Paul was dead, is what they said.
Ah, okay.
And then there was that rumor going around that Paul was dead. And so
Wow.
that's what he's referring to here. You'd even believe, you're so gullible, you believe that rumor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What's her name?
Golden Girl.
Golden Girl, the lovely and valiant Golden Girl.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps maybe Buxom. That a good word for a
Buxom.
Buxom.
That's a nice name.
Yeah.
That's a nice word. Yeah.
Help me, get me out of here. Golden Girl's escaping. Should we? Nah, she's only an actress, strictly for cheesecake purposes. Let her go. America has always prevailed against its traitors, those who talk of freedom only to sell us out to our enemies. We won't be fooled, and we won't be stopped. The fake Cap, throws his shield at the real Cap. You tell him, Cap. What? Holy. And they're reacting to the fact that Steve Rogers jumped over the shield being thrown at him. You'll have to do better than that, fascist. I could dodge those in my sleep. You may really believe in the madness you expose, but that can't excuse you. For freedom is more than just a word, a bendable phrase. Freedom is life itself. And he kicks him down. And it cries out when it's being butchered. And then Nick Fury, General Fury, comes behind Bucky with a gun on him. All right, Bucky boy, this one traitor who shoots you as soon as look at you. So stand very still. And across America, in Watts, the South Side, as well as Harlem, the walls come tumbling down as it looks like tanks are just busting through. And the Second American Revolution rises up angrily. And then one of I don't know who this is, points a gun at the cameraman. Brother, keep them running. America's going to see everything that's happening here today. Get up. You're just like all the rest. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. Get up so I can knock you down. You're good. I'll grant you that, commie. But I'm what? And he goes to hit him with the shield, but Cap blocks it. Too slow by half, imitator. Freedom only to those worthy of it. And you decide who's worthy of it. You make me sick. I'll make you more than that, you fake. You put freedom in the hands of criminals who would destroy our way of life. You would destroy everything. You're everything I was meant to fight, Munster. Your hatred of others, your denial of others' humanity. You're a Nazi smear on the American flag. And while I'll live, I'll stop you, expose you, vanquish you, destroy you. And he takes his shield and destroys the fake Cap's shield. My shield, it's not possible. All right, you're better than me. You may even be the original. The commies may have dug you up, but you won't destroy America. You won't destroy my country. Oh, yes, I will. And he punches him and knocks him down. Your country isn't America, monster. It's hell. And it's pressed down on America for too long. So swears Captain America. And he gives an uppercut. That's it. Fight on. I want to tear that costume for your Nazi body. You lousy red betray everything. All my life, loved America. No traitor. Seen it run down. Spit on the flag. Get all of them who you can't. America needs me. Needs you? Only as a reminder, madman. Only as a reminder. And the fake Cap falls down. And then the crowd starts to turn on them and calling him a commie fake, and you can't do this to real Americans. And the soldiers that came with him, don't worry, Cap. They won't rush the stage. These kind have their dirty work done for them. I almost hope they do try something. And then he turns and he says to the crowd, listen to me, all of you out there. You were told by this man, your hero, that America is the greatest country in the world. He told you that the Americas were the greatest people, that America be refined like silver, could have the impurities hammered out of it and shine more brightly. He went on about how precious America was, how you needed to make sure it remained great. And he told you anything was justified to preserve that great treasure, that pearl of great price that is America. Well, I say America is nothing. Without its ideals, its commitment to the freedom of all men, America is a piece of trash. A nation is nothing. A flag is a piece of cloth. I fought Adolf Hitler, not because America was great, because it was fragile. I knew that liberty could as easily be snuffed out here as in Nazi Germany. As a people, we were no different from them. When I returned, I saw that you nearly did turn America into nothing. And the only reason you're not less than nothing is that it's still possible for you to bring freedom back to America. And there's a long silence, and then they realize it's the real Captain America. And the word spread, it's the real Cap. And the word becomes a roar. Stop. You followed a leader in this garb once, and he led you into evil. I won't have you exchange one piece of cloth for another. I can't undo the horrible damage you've let befall America. Even now, men are dying in the streets for that cause, and the war for liberty is just starting. I've taken away your crutch. Now you must look to your own hearts. Join with those that you have denied were your brothers. Reach out for your ideals that made this costume I wear mean something, and find America once again. The great hall is hushed. From outside, there is gunfire. Cap stands weary, angry, demanding. Then a lone voice echoes, and the voice is joined by others, until there is a low tide of noise throughout the hall. At first, the words are swallowed by the echoes. Then, Cap recognizes them. For purple mountains, majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. And then Cap stands there and a tear in his eye. The end.
Wow. Wow.
That's a heavy story, Bob.
That is a heavy story, Rick. Yeah. All the more so since it was written in 1981.
Could have been written today, huh?
Certainly could have. Ripped from the headlines.
Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed.
Makes you think, though, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, what if stories can be fun? They're entertaining. They give you a
Mm-hmm.
different perspective on things. But this one, at least from my view anyway, is written in a manner that really does make you think
Right.
about what it means to be Captain America, what Captain America actually stands for, and how fragile a thing it is.
And it's also a little scary to see how easily, people can become manipulated.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All you have to do is play on their fears. And politicians know this. People in power know this.
Mm-hmm.
This goes back to the dawn of man, right? If you want to be in power, you create an enemy and you play on people's fears and you give them a solution. And that's how people get in power and that's how people stay in power.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the eternal. Is it marketing or merchandising, right? It's a little bit of both, probably.
Ah,
Right.
I'm gonna go with public relations.
Yeah, all right, public relations. Yeah, it's definitely definitely the key.
I don't want to get into politics. You know, our listeners don't want to hear us wax poetically about politics.
Certainly not.
But you know, you and I have strong opinions,
Hmm.
and you know, reading the story, uh, I, 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 I'm cognizant of the fact that people on both sides can probably see this story and take something away from it.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I mean, listen, William Burnside wasn't wrong in several cases. You know, and that's the problem with evil is that a lot of it there's some truth and some good somewhere in it that makes you feel that it's not evil.
Well, and you know, and I would say also that he seemed very reasonable in the
Yeah.
beginning, right?
Hmm.
I mean, he didn't start off as he said in the very beginning. He's not a red baiter, right? He didn't start off lobbing ideological bombs. He started off very reasonable and wanting to talk through things and just taking some time to lower the temperature of
Hmm.
the situation and appropriate measures to do so. But even you get caught up in things, and it's easy to push to the extremes
Hmm.
when there's no checks. um, it's one of the beauties of our system is checks and balances
Hmm.
in our political institutions to prevent just that sort of rush to the margins.
Hmm.
um, and this cap had no checks and balances on him.
Hmm.
And of course, as we learned subsequently, um, the unstable super soldier serum that he received made him psychologically unstable anyway.
Right.
So he is expected to get progressively worse the longer he's out of suspended animation. So that doesn't help matters.
True.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get into favorite panels. Actually, you went first last time, so I get
All
to go
right.
first.
All right.
So I'm going to take page 37, panel 6, and that's when Cap's giving the speech.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite panel in the story is when he says, I fought Adolf Hitler not because America was great, but because it was fragile. I really liked that portion of the speech,
Yeah.
and so I'm going to go with that one as my favorite panel in the story.
Yeah.
How about
That's a
you?
great choice. I think mine is around page 23. I'm not exactly sure, but it is when Cap has been woken up in the submarine. It is after they have attempted to subdue him unsuccessfully. And the captain asks him, it's that center panel of that page when the captain asks him, quickly, mister, what year do you think it is? And Steve responds, why, it's 1945, of course. But the part that gets me is the
Uh-huh.
captain responds, I knew it. I always felt, hoped it. Now it's come true. And I love this panel and I love that dialogue because it reminds me of the Arthurian legend, right?
Mm.
Where at the end of uh, at the end of the
Excalibur?
at the end of the Arthurian story, Excalibur is returned to the Lady in the Lake, and Arthur's dead, and or is he? And he disappears in the mists. Um, and the legend is that he will come again when England most needs him.
Hmm.
So there's a bit of an Arthurian
Oh,
to
yeah, I could
this,
see
right?
that. Yeah.
That like people hold out hope that the hero will return, and he has. And so when I read that, it gives me some goosebumps because I love heroes. Obviously, we're Captain America fans, and we all I'm not Bonnie Tyler, but I'm holding out for a hero, buddy.
Oh God, we had to go there.
Yeah,
We need a hero.
I love that song.
Did you ever see that last Star Wars movie? Was it Rise of Skywalker or something like that? And someone took that song, We Need a Hero, and did a music video taking clips from that movie,
I
and
have not seen that one.
it's um what is the bad guy's name?
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
And it's Kylo Ren because he whatever, and he's running, and he's like going up against different people, and he's fighting
yeah,
them, and he's chasing after, and it's like, I need a hero, and they made a music video. It's actually really funny.
yeah.
You should totally Google that.
Oh, goodness.
What's going on your t-shirt?
All right. Well, I'm going with that full page splash of Cap and Spidey and Snap Wilson and his black cadres swooping down from the rafters of Madison Square Garden
Hmm.
onto the heads of Bucky and Imposter Cap. That's such a great page there, and I love that, and I also love the dialogue. Your time has come, Imposter. You're going to pay for your crimes at the hands of the real Captain America.
All right, there you
Yeah.
go.
How
Full
about
page
yourself?
splash. So for me, Bob, I'm going with page 35, panel 4. And this is when the two Caps are fighting each other. And it is Cap saying, "And you decide who's worthy, that you make me sick." And he gives a backhand to the other Cap. And there's just like a whole bunch of like lines
Yeah.
flying everywhere. Makes for a cool image, I think, on the t-shirt. That's what I'm putting on.
It looked good on a tie dye.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I
A
like
little tie
that.
dye action.
Yeah, big
Right.
time.
Yeah. All right, Rick. Well, what about your time capsule?
Time capsule. Ooh, all right. Well, I'm gonna go with the low-hanging fruit here. I'm
Ooh.
gonna go with page 5, and that first panel where it says President will visit Red China, and
Uh-huh.
there's President waves, and it's a little silhouette of Ronald Reagan. Um, that one definitely pinpoints to a particular time
Hmm.
in the Marvel universe, so and our universe. And so that's going in my time capsule. How about you?
All right. Well, I'm gonna go with the high hanging fruit here. Uh
Well, you're taller.
so I'm going to go with the fact that the American First Party Convention is being held at Madison Square Garden. And I think that is a really great call out. Now, mind you, it's a different Madison Square Garden because the one that is operating now and has since 1968 is different than the one that was being used in 1939 when the German American Bund held their Nazi rally for, quote,
Mm.
true Americanism, unquote. But there are some parallels between, I think, what the American First Party was pushing and what that 1939 rally held. And there's also another historical antecedent because one of the first party conventions that was held at Madison Square Garden when it opened in 1968 was the party convention that nominated George Wallace as the third party candidate for the American Independent Party. Now, as you
Hmm.
remember, George Wallace, the former governor of Alabama, was a segregationist, a passionate segregationist who ran on a platform of law and order, states' rights, and racial segregation. And so I think
All this is going in your time capsule,
yeah. Well,
Bob.
the fact that we that Peter Gillis, right, the writer, used Madison Square Garden as the venue for the announcement of Towery's nomination as the for the American First Party, and that's where that showdown took place. I think
Mm,
he really dug deep on that one, and I think that's a great way to pull from history. So yeah, that's going in my time capsule.
very cool. All right. Well, that's a good one to put in there. Bob, I think for next episode, I want to stick around at the same time period. I want to do this is going to be 1981 going on 1982. So same time period, but I want to take it's a single story issue in Captain America. It's Captain America 267. So this is written by J.M. DeMatteis, uh, and art by Mike Zeck and John Beatty and Bob Sharon. So in my mind, the dream team. And the it's a story about a villain called the Everyman. And here is another take on someone saying, "This is my version of America,"
Hmm.
and what Cap has to face there as well. So, in this one is not in a fictitious what if scenario. This is in the Marvel 616.
Yeah.
And so we'll get to see Cap take that on. And I think also Bernie Rosenthal plays a big part in the story as well.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I don't think I probably have not read that book since 1981. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So that'll be fun to read.
yeah, it will be. Here's the cover in case anybody was curious what that was, but it's a swashbuckling man with a sword going up against Captain America, right with the Lady Liberty behind him.
Mm.
And his sword shoots an electric bolt because it's 1981 and that's what happens. All right, Bob, any last words before we call it an episode?
I do not think so, Rick.
All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis. And thank you for listening to the episode. Please, if you have a chance, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. If you're on YouTube right now, please smash that like button and subscribe. If you're whatever platform you're on, if you have the opportunity to rate and leave us a comment, we always love that as well. So thank you very much. And thank you for listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.